In the White House briefing room.
All right, Mark, now the details. The car bombing has claimed the lives of at least 17 children and 2 adults in Oklahoma City. There are unconfirmed reports that as many as 80 people have perished, and with each passing minute, it's feared more will be found dead. More bodies will be found. Authorities say that the car bomb was detonated outside a federal building shortly after 10 this morning, Philadelphia time. The powerful blast ripped off the front of the 9-story office building. As you can see here, about 500 federal workers were already in their offices at the time. More than 200 people have been hospitalized with injuries. It's believed there are still children and adults trapped in the building's daycare center. This woman was at her desk when the bomb was set off, and she says the floors came tumbling down in front of her.
Where I was sitting, the only place the floor didn't cave in. I mean, right over here, the floor was gone.
So the floor that you were sitting on didn't cave, but all around you it did?
No, my little area where I was sitting, but I was on the 7th floor, and then, of course, the 8th floor came down and went through, and then they just kept on going down. And there was a window to a hall by my desk, and I crawled over it and got out.
Well, the blast set fire to dozens of cars in the parking lot of the federal building. It also blew out windows in nearby buildings. Another woman was working across the street from the federal building when the blast occurred.
I was typing on a document, and all of a sudden the ceiling fell in on my head, and it took me a second. It's like I was almost unconscious for a second to figure out what had happened, and the whole building just felt like it was caving in. I didn't know what was going on.
Well, doctors, nurses, and other emergency workers rushed to the scene in hospitals in Oklahoma City to lend a hand. Now, there was added chaos at the scene when authorities thought they had discovered a second unexploded device. Police told everyone to run for it.
Another bomb, move back. Oh my God, another bomb.
Well, as it turns out, a second bomb was not found. Authorities have launched a manhunt for 2 suspects they describe as Middle Eastern. Those suspects were seen, we are told, wearing blue jogging suits and riding in a brown pickup truck with tinted windows. Now, there have been reports that an Islamic group has taken responsibility for this blast, but that has not been confirmed by authorities. Now, it could take rescue workers several days to complete their search of the building and account for all those people missing.
The reason so many children were killed and injured is because 2 daycare centers were close to the blast. As we said, one center was inside a lower floor of the federal building, a daycare center for federal workers. The other daycare center was at a YMCA across the street. Children inside that center were cut by flying glass and debris when the windows of the Y were blown in. Workers tried to rush children to get medical treatment. Dozens of parents raced to the scene to find out the fate of their children who had been inside that center.
I am so relieved, and I'm praying for all those other people.
One woman said her husband had dropped their child off and heard the explosion about 2 blocks away from the YMCA. The father was able to come right back and fortunately pick up his child. Authorities already believe they know some of the details of the bombing. The daycare center where the children were killed sat right in front of the federal building. It is estimated the car bomb was positioned outside the front of the building. It weighed about 1,000 to 1,200 pounds, which explains how the damage was so severe when it was detonated. The blast destroyed the front of the building and carved a section out of the middle of that federal building.
Well, President Clinton has ordered federal emergency response officials to Oklahoma City to help deal with this blast and, of course, the victims. Now, earlier today, White House spokesman Mike McCurry said that the president has been following the developments on television and is very concerned about the victims.
The president's first and foremost concern is that every thing be done to assist those who have been victims of this incident, to make sure that we've got the right and necessary type of assistance available to local authorities in Oklahoma City, and he is satisfied that those steps are being taken. Secondly,
now, McCurry says security has been tightened at all federal buildings because of the explosion and several telephoned bomb threats in other states. The FBI this afternoon sent several bomb-sniffing dogs to Oklahoma City to help with their investigation. And the Justice Department has already set up an emergency command center there, along with the FBI, FEMA, ATF, and all the other relevant federal agencies.
Now let's get the latest on the bomb scare at the federal building in Wilmington. And John Rollins has been there through the afternoon. John, Obviously, we're happy to report they found nothing, but it was quite a tense afternoon.
That's right, Mark. Life is returning to normal here in the 800 block of King Street in Wilmington. It was quite a scare for several hours this afternoon as officials dealt with a bomb scare here at the Federal Building. Shortly after noon, more than 100 workers at the Boggs Federal Building were told to evacuate. Aware of the Oklahoma City blast, no one needed persuading.
We heard an alarm and then we vacated the building. There were federal marshals throughout the building and they told us to evacuate the building, and that's what happened.
The evacuation was prompted by a phone call to the Wilmington News-Journal that implied there was a bomb.
The caller indicated, "Your federal building is next," and hung up.
Federal agents and local police checked outside and inside the building several times. Bomb-sniffing dogs found nothing.
At this time, we're hoping that we can just clear the building and have everybody go back to work, and it appears that everything's fine at this point.
At about 3:15, searchers signaled an all clear. The call was apparently a hoax. Returning workers, though, remain nervous.
I'm apprehensive. You don't know what's lurking behind the door, you know, where it's going to hit you, or if it's going to hit you, or if it's going to be you, or who.
Investigators say they're going to continue to look at this incident. At this point, though, they see no direct connection between what happened here and what occurred in Oklahoma City. They feel at this point that it's more likely an opportunistic effort on the part of the Wilmington caller. I'm John Rollins, live on the Action Cam in Wilmington.
Thank you, John. Security has also been beefed up at the Federal Building and Federal Courthouse in Center City, Philadelphia. Let's go live now to the William Green Federal Complex in Center City. Officials here say they are in a heightened state of security, but that there has been no sign of trouble or threats here. Nonetheless, workers we spoke with this afternoon are quite concerned in light of the deadly bombing in Oklahoma.
Well, somewhat fearful, but it's one federal building, and it's a big country, and I don't know what more can be done at this point here.
Just general fear, concern for the other people, a lot of remorse for the children, especially for the children. People are innocent, have nothing to do with the situation.
So the Green Building houses the offices of the IRS, the FBI, Secret Service, DEA, local State Department, and like Oklahoma, it too has a daycare center. Well, meantime, in Trenton, a guard did a sweep of the Federal Building there and is keeping watch to make sure all remains secure there. Now, obviously, the tragedy in Oklahoma has put everyone on alert tonight. And that state of alert means Philadelphia emergency officials are also checking their emergency plans to make sure they're prepared. At a news conference, the city's managing director and police and fire chief said that Philadelphia is as ready as any city can be for a disaster the magnitude of the one in Oklahoma City.
Having a good communication system is of the essence. So you have to have predetermined plans in order to call for more people as quickly as you can.
And city officials say Philadelphia does have such a plan. They say they are prepared for the worst, but of course they're hoping they won't be put to the test.
Chester County is currently home to Oklahoma City native Rick Durham. Durham's been a missionary for the Landmark Baptist Church in Euclid Township for the past year, and he said today that hearing the news about that explosion leaves many unanswered questions in his mind.
Why would they do it? Was it terrorists, or why was there some kind of explosion like that, or if it was, or what kind of people were killed, or if it was friends that I knew or not? And so he just worried about the people involved in the whole situation.
Durham says that he will try to contact friends in Oklahoma City by telephone to see how they are doing later this evening. And that is up to the minute our coverage of the Oklahoma bombing. To recap, at least 19 people are known dead, possibly 80 have been killed, and hundreds were injured when a car bomb ripped through a federal building in Oklahoma City. Coming up at 5:30, a live report from the scene. Then at 6, the story of a man who planned the disaster drill for Oklahoma City. He's now in the Delaware Valley. And, of course, there'll be a complete wrap-up of the day's events on the ABC World News tonight. Action News reporter Dan Cuellar is on the way to Oklahoma. He'll have live reports as soon as possible. And we are still standing by live at the White House, where President Clinton is expected to make a statement to the nation about this bombing any moment now. We'll bring you that live just as soon as the president arrives in the White House briefing room.
17 of them children. It is feared the death toll will continue to climb as more victims are discovered in the wreckage. Now, hospitals and emergency centers are treating hundreds of people injured in the blast. Federal office buildings around the country have been put on alert, and bomb threats have been phoned in to several of them, including the office complex in Wilmington, Delaware. We will have the very latest on the blast coming up in just a few moments at 5:30. And again, we are waiting for President Clinton to make a statement about this situation in Oklahoma. As soon as the president is ready to speak, we will go live to Washington.
Clock numbers. Well, that's the forecast for this evening, which says mostly clear and mild. Overnight low, 52 degrees. Now we'll go to the numbers for tonight. Our present temperature reading, this is what you won't believe. We're at 82 degrees right now, 58% the relative humidity. The barometer is 2968. It is falling in the winds. A nice breeze out here tonight out of the satellite 6 right now, and we'll show you the movement of the system. We had cloud cover early this morning. You'll see it in just a second. There it is. There's all the cloud cover. You can see within the past few hours, since about noontime or so, how things just started to dramatically clear out. So tomorrow we're going to start with sunshine, and we may reverse the pattern, and by tomorrow night we may pick up a little shower activity, because when we look ahead...
Children and 2 adults have been confirmed killed. Hundreds more are feared dead, and scores are injured after a devastating car bombing at the federal building in Oklahoma City. The blast literally took off the side of the building just after 9 this morning. That's 10 Philadelphia time. The impact was so strong that cars parked across the street exploded and windows of nearby buildings blew out. And within minutes, the streets turned into makeshift hospital wards as rescue workers tried to help survivors. Some people who made it out simply could not believe what had happened.
Well, I was just in the office and the walls moved in toward us and I was thrown on my back, and then debris from the ceiling started raining down on me and I had to kick my way out to get to the exit. There was smoke and there was debris raining down from the top, just raining, falling down.
We understand that President Clinton is now prepared to make his statement on the situation in Oklahoma, so we are going to leave this video and go live to the president in Washington.
With our team, which we assembled to deal with this bombing. And I have determined to take the following steps to assure the strongest response to this situation. First, I have deployed a crisis management team under the leadership of the FBI, working with the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, military and local authorities. We are sending the world's finest investigators to solve these murders. Second, I have declared an emergency in Oklahoma City. And at my direction, James Lee Witt, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is now on his way there to make sure we do everything we can to help the people of Oklahoma deal with the tragedy. Third, we are taking every precaution to reassure and to protect people who work in or live near other federal facilities. Let there be no room for doubt. We will find the people who did this. When we do, justice will be swift, certain, and severe. These people are killers, and they must be treated like killers. Finally, let me say that I ask all Americans tonight to pray for the people who have lost their lives, to pray for the families and the friends of the dead and the wounded, to pray for the people of Oklahoma City. May God's grace be with them. Meanwhile, we will be about our work. Thank you.
How many short people?
This has been a tragic and heartbreaking day. I can tell you this. The FBI and the law enforcement community will pursue every lead and use every possible resource to bring the people responsible to justice. The FBI has established a command post in Oklahoma City, and it is in 24-hour contact with FBI headquarters command post and with the Department of Justice. 4 FBI special agents in charge have been dispatched to the scene to provide 24-hour operation of the command post. The FBI has sent 4 evidence response teams and explosive ordnance teams to Oklahoma City. 5 of the very best FBI agents experienced in this type of investigation are arriving in Oklahoma City, as have bomb technicians from Boston, Chicago, Miami, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. 13 members of the Rapid Start team will be entering data as the evidence is collected. 50 more agents are available for arrival tomorrow, and more will be used as needed. The FBI and federal law enforcement have received superb cooperation from local authorities in Oklahoma City, and the federal law enforcement agencies are working together. The ATF has sent 2 national response teams and a mobile command center. It has 3 explosive technicians and 3 laboratory technicians in Oklahoma City, and it is prepared to send 20 to 25 more personnel tomorrow. The Secret Service is also sending explosives experts. In addition, the Oklahoma National Guard has been deployed to assist in control of the area and the evacuation of the injured. The United States Army has deployed the 61st Ordnance Detachment with a robot from Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The Tulsa Police Department has deployed 2 bomb technicians, 2 dogs, and a robot. And the FEMA is playing a major role in aid and assistance. We cannot tell how long it will be before we can say with certainty what occurred and who is responsible. But we will find the perpetrators, and we will bring them to justice.
Have you put out a bulletin seeking some particular suspects, and what can you tell us about that? There are reports that there are descriptions of a couple of people who were seeking.
What I can say about all evidentiary issues and all leads is that it would hinder the investigation to discuss any action that we are taking in pursuant to the leads, but we are pursuing absolutely every shred of evidence available.
If people are to be on the lookout for someone, isn't there a way that you can describe those people?
Sounds from everything you've said as if you've concluded that this was a terrorist attack of some kind. Can you confirm that?
I would not characterize it as such until the evidence is in, but we are pursuing every piece of evidence with whatever motivation behind it.
Do you have any statistics on the casualties?
We have some statistics on the casualties, but they are increasing every moment. What we are trying to do is to make sure that we pursue every lead. What we have been told is that there were 550 people assigned in the building. Only 250 had been accounted for before I came in. There may be as many as 100 to 250 more people to account for. The casualty figures are climbing. 100 victims have been treated. 6 children who were in the daycare center have been confirmed as dead. And we are just pursuing absolutely every lead that we can.
General, have there been any more threats against any other federal buildings across the country?
In a situation like this, there are sometimes terribly misguided, horrible people who create copycat situations. We've responded in each instance, and so far nothing has materialized.
General Reno, was there any indication, any warning that anything like this could happen? Because there are conflicting reports that, not specific warnings per se, but warnings that there might be terrorist activity in the period after March.
Again, I can't comment on any specific lead or any of the evidence that we have developed.
Do you think there's any tie-up with Waco?
Ms. Reno, the current crime bill that the President has signed includes a death penalty provision. Assuming you do catch these people, will you go for that?
18 U.S.C. Section 844 relates to those who maliciously damage or destroy a federal building. If there is death, if death occurs, the death penalty is available, and we will seek it.
General Reno, any more indication of where this device exploded?
Again, that would be commenting on the evidence that is being developed, and we would not want to do that because to do so could possibly hinder the investigation.
General, other governments are...
General Reno.
Sorry, on the importance of this event, are we crossing a new threshold of concern about security in this country when even Oklahoma City is not safe?
I think that this has been a matter of concern for all Americans anytime you see acts like this around the world, and I think it is a matter that has got to be pursued with all vigor. I can't tell you whether it's a crossroads. I can tell you that any time something like this occurs, we have to do everything possible to ensure that the people who are responsible are held accountable, and that we do everything we can to prevent a future of recurrence.
General, have you decided whether or not this is a coincidence?
General, what cautions would you urge other people who work in federal buildings or live near them to take?
We are working with the General Services Administration, the United States Marshal Service, and the FBI to take sensible precautions, and the federal employees who have been involved have just been wonderful.
General, have you decided whether this is just a coincidence that it happened on the second anniversary of the Waco siege?
Again, we are pursuing all leads. We cannot tell exactly what happened or who is responsible, and it would be better not to comment until we can conclusively talk about it.
General, has anyone called to claim responsibility for this, any credible group or organization?
Again, I don't think that I should comment on the evidence, because to do so would hinder the investigation.
Confirm it was a car bomb.
Again, I cannot confirm any evidentiary lead that we are pursuing, because I think that would hinder the investigation.
General, if another government or governments are found to be involved, would military retaliation be appropriate? Will it be carried out?
I don't think that we should deal with what-ifs. I think we should make sure that those people who are responsible are pursued and brought to justice.
We have a last question, please.
General, the government of Israel has offered its help because it has a vast experience with this sort of thing. Do you know if we're accepting that help?
We will, of course, rely on any additional resource that can possibly be involved and be utilized appropriately in bringing these people to justice.
Thank you very much.
There you have the Attorney General of the United States, Janet Reno, after the President, talking very strongly about the fact that she will A, seek the death penalty, and B, the tragic news that there may be as many as 200 people still missing in that building.
Right. And the President, of course, declaring a state of emergency in Oklahoma City and asking all Americans to pray for those people affected in Oklahoma.
And of course, Lisa, the Oklahoma blast apparently has sparked a wave of fear and bomb threats at federal offices all across the country. About an hour after the blast in Oklahoma, Boston police evacuated a downtown federal building. It seems some Internal Revenue Service staff people saw that doors which should have been locked were not. They may have been edgy, but in any case, to be safe, the building was cleared and checked out. Nothing was found. In Fort Worth, Texas, Boise, Idaho, and here in Portland, Oregon, federal buildings were evacuated and searched after phony bomb threats were called in. And a threat triggered the evacuation of the J. Caleb Boggs building, the federal building in Wilmington, Delaware today. A man called the Wilmington newspaper warning the Boggs building would be next. It was a clear reference to the Oklahoma City blast, but police brought in the bomb-detecting dogs and searched for much of the day. From about noon to 3, nothing was found. The building reopened late this afternoon. Right now, let's go live to Vern Odom at the Federal Building in Center City, Philadelphia, where there was an immediate security reaction to that Oklahoma bombing. Vernon?
Mark, security measures were tightened here very discreetly right away. The Oklahoma City blast is the realization of long-held fears at federal buildings like this one in the heart of Center City, Philadelphia. To the question, could it happen here? The overwhelming response, of course it could. The area around the federal building complex was the picture of normalcy and relative tranquility today in the wake of the bomb attack in Oklahoma City. One of the officials in charge of security here said they are now in a state of heightened vigilance, looking more, listening more, but no sign of trouble or threats have been reported today. Only worry.
If it happened out there, which is a rural situation, not as densely populated, is certainly something that could happen here.
The William Green Jr. building on Arch Street contains the IRS, FBI, Secret Service, DEA, and the local State Department office, plus a daycare center for the children of employees.
It says something, I think, to the security in the buildings overall. I mean, we've had bomb threats here. We've had bombs here before, and just, you know, it's scary. And you wonder, are you putting your children at risk by having them in the daycare center?
Security is considered fairly tight for the thousands who work here, but they know nothing in this kind of government building can be foolproof or airtight.
Every day when we go into work, there are any number of people coming in. It's a public building, and we can't really negotiate or stop anybody from coming in here who who has business here.
A private company runs the daycare program here. Late today, I spoke with some of the parents of children who receive daycare here at the Federal Building.
And the truth is, I know it could happen here. It could happen there. Somebody could actually drive a car in the garage and do the same thing, from what I understand.
You're going to keep her here?
We're going to talk about it.
Well, they do have security, and it's a sort of random thing that you cannot totally protect yourself from. And so, you know, that's just the way it is.
Are you going to continue to bring your kids here?
Yeah, I think so. You know.
Clearly, a state of alert will exist here for some time to come. Vernon Odom, Channel 6 Action News, reporting live from Center City.
Thank you, Vernon. And of course, as you might imagine, everyone is talking today about what happened in Oklahoma City today, especially people who were there. David Murphy is live at Philadelphia International Airport. And David, I understand you've spoken with passengers who have flown from Oklahoma City to Philadelphia today.
Yeah, Lisa, a few Delaware Valley residents trickling in from Oklahoma City on various airlines at this hour this evening. One of them has a very interesting story to tell. She is Joyce Smith of Northeast Philadelphia. Joyce Smith, who is just back from a fateful visit with a friend in Oklahoma City this morning, a friend who, as it turns out, is an attorney and who originally had an appointment in the Federal Building this morning.
I was at a friend's apartment and we heard this crash. And I looked out the window, and it shook the whole building. And here, actually, it's sort of moving for me. He would have died if I hadn't been visiting, because he's a lawyer, and he had an appointment that morning that he canceled.
Smith says the friend had an early morning appointment with a judge and some narcotics division officials in the Federal Building in Oklahoma City, but postponed it so he could take her to the airport, perhaps a life-saving change of plans for that gentleman. And to give you an idea of the magnitude of the blast, Joyce Smith says that she was within about a 10-minute drive of the Federal Building, a relatively good distance, but she says that the magnitude of the blast was absolutely shuddering. It shook the walls of the apartment building that she was in with her friend. David Murphy live at the Action Cam, Philadelphia International Airport.
David, thank you. This is ironic and probably just coincidental, but the Oklahoma bombing comes on the anniversary of the fiery ending of the federal siege of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. 2 years ago today, federal agents stormed the compound and killed most of those inside, including the cult leader David Koresh. There had been some early reports that Koresh followers may have had something to do with this bombing, but FBI and other investigators downplay those stories, and an attorney who once represented Koresh said that reports of a link are, quote, pure speculation.
Well, joining us live tonight from our sister station in New York City, WABC, is former New York City Police Commissioner Robert McGuire, now a security expert. Mr. McGuire, thank you for joining us. This bombing has been compared to the terrorist car bombing at the World Trade Center 2 years ago. Can you shed any light on any possible connection between the two? Are there any similarities other than the fact that it's believed a car bombing was involved in each?
Well, I think that is a very real similarity, that there were car bombs used. Car bombs now have become the weapons of choice for terrorists around the world. I think that the explosive nature of this device was very similar, and I think you're going to, it's from a probability standpoint, you're probably going to find that the people who did this were international terrorists. However, there is also a chance, whether it was the Branch Davidians or some other individual with a grudge against the Veterans Administration or the DEA or the Alcohol and Tobacco Firearms Agency, there's always a chance that we had a domestic terrorist attack and it wasn't international in nature. But I think the similarities are very striking. Although I think this is a more serious incident for this country than the World Trade Center bombing.
And why is that?
One, it's the second incident of such a serious nature in a couple of years. Two, the large numbers of human casualties. Three, the location, namely in Oklahoma City, not in New York, not in Los Angeles, but in the heartland of this country, where most Americans thought they were safe from this kind of activity. I think it's going to shake the psyche of our country in a way that the World Trade Center bombing did not.
Well, obviously at the World Trade Center we have better security now than we did prior to 2 years ago. Do you think, Mr. McGuire, that enough is being done to ensure that our buildings are safe against terrorism in this country?
The simple fact is we're not secure in terms of our large buildings against terrorist activities. But we have to understand that we've always been a free and open society. We've prided ourselves on the ability of our people to move freely throughout our country. It may be that the debate now has to be about how much limitation we are willing to assume as a nation in order to enhance our security. We have accommodated to greater security at airports, as you know, on airplanes, and now the public debate has to be, are we willing to do some of that in our commercial buildings, in the federal buildings that we go to, bridges and tunnels, etc. And that's a very difficult question to answer.
Understandably, people around this country are frightened, and obviously some changes need to be made. Do you think, though, that we could ever get to the point where our buildings in the U.S. are terrorist-proof?
No, that's impossible. But I think we should listen to the President's words this evening in his press conference. He really talked about this in military terms. And I think the federal government's response, when, as, and if they identify the perpetrators of this particular tragedy or horrible crime, are going to be to respond in a military-type fashion, rather than to worry about the nuances of due process under the law.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Robert McGuire, for shedding light on this very difficult and horrendous situation. We're going to go live now to Oklahoma City, where the mayor of that city is holding a news conference.
Oklahoma City Police Department is in charge of the perimeter area, as Chief Gonzalez said. The FBI is in charge of the crime scene. We will secure the area, which it has been secured, and we're making sure that all medical personnel and that the rescue efforts of the Oklahoma City Fire Department and the other fire departments. I want to thank all the communities from around the country who have called and volunteered their services, their rescue squads, dog teams, a variety of things that some are on the way, some we have told that we don't need right now, but we do appreciate that. We have interlocal agreements with all the communities in central Oklahoma, which there are some 23. All of those police officers and fire departments are all involved in support activities or in immediate rescue activities. The area will be cordoned off for several days. It is going to take some time to get through the debris. All the gas lines have been cut off. The natural gas lines have been cut off in this particular area until we determine whether we have any major gas leaks. At the time, we are not aware of any water leaks or sewer leaks that we have, but the gas lines have been turned off until we can get more information. I requested from the governor this morning that the National Guard be sent in. He immediately responded. That was about 11:30 this morning. The National Guard will be coming in to assist with security tonight at approximately 6 o'clock. I would again encourage that citizens from the area, people that are not involved in the rescue effort, do not come to the downtown area, do not impede what we are trying to do to determine if we have any more survivors in the properties. So it's important that they do that. The National Guard will be assisting with the police and the Sheriff's Department to make sure that we keep the area secure, also for the investigators that will be brought in by the FBI. At this time, I would like to introduce Governor Frank Keating, who will make a few comments.
As governor of the state of Oklahoma today, I took specific action in response to this evil, despicable, outrageous act. First, I ordered the Army and Air National Guard to cooperate fully with the local authorities and the federal authorities to share resources, to provide emergency assistance as well as crowd control assistance. And these individuals will be on duty until such time as they're no longer needed. Secondly, I instructed the Department of Public Safety to utilize the full services of the Oklahoma Highway Patrol and other personnel to assist in emergency assistance as well as in crowd control and property protection. Third, I declared a state of emergency in Oklahoma City with a view toward seeking to coordinate all of the state and local response to assist the federal family in not only assisting the injured, but also identifying and quickly apprehending those evil individuals who are responsible for this outrage. Fourth, our emergency team will be in place around the clock to assist. We will do anything we can as a state to participate in the successful investigation and resolution of this event. Lastly, I want to thank President Clinton. We spoke this afternoon on the telephone. He indicated to me what he announced shortly ago about the involvement of ATF and the FBI in this case, the bringing in of outside experts to assist us in this state in investigating and solving this terrible tragedy. I do appreciate his willingness to help, and certainly I'm grateful for the involvement of the state and local folks. I also want to thank the people of Oklahoma City, for their outpouring of courage and commitment and compassion for those who have been injured. It really is remarkable, the lines that have appeared in front of the Red Cross and in front of hospitals to give blood. We intend to honor the dead and honor the living by finding out who did this and never permitting this conduct to recur.
President Clinton has declared this a federal emergency. FEMA will be responding, and they had intended to be here by now, but they should be here shortly to assist in the cleanup efforts. The FBI has been designated by President Clinton as the lead federal agency in this investigation. All the agencies, however, in that building have pledged their full cooperation, and of course, they were the ones most injured. The FBI did not have an office at that federal building, and we did not suffer any casualties. But however, many of our fellow law enforcement brothers were injured, and we still do not have a count with regard to the extent of that injury. We have at this time no assumptions with regard to who caused this particular bombing. And we have had hundreds, if not thousands, of leads from individuals calling in to reputed eyewitnesses. Each one of those is treated very seriously. But at this point, we cannot speculate with regard to who is responsible. Other than that, I think we have very little else to add to that. We will throw it out to questions. The chief of the police department indicated that we had individuals here that will be glad to respond to any area that you might have. Yes.
Go ahead and tell us about, I know you don't want to mention the evidence of the investigation, but we understand that there have been these two suspects in the Middle Eastern descent that you all may be looking for in the food pickup from Cavalier.
We have, the Attorney General came on right before we began this press conference, and I think she's absolutely correct when she indicated that we're not going to discuss individuals at this time. As I indicated
in the building at this time, so I choose only to give numbers that have actually been extracted and confirmed. We have 58 critical transports that have occurred up to this point. We have 20 confirmed dead in a portable morgue at this point. We're sure that that number will go up because we have seen fatalities in the buildings that haven't been removed yet. But again, I don't want to start speculation on numbers, so we'll update you from time to time, but what you'll get from us are the confirmed numbers at this point.
You don't want to speculate, but however, we heard a second ago from the Attorney General say that there could be 200, 250 people missing. Could you at least go into what's unaccounted for?
We haven't been able to get any unaccountability at this point. I know the agencies are all getting hold of their people and trying to do some unaccountability, but we don't have any idea at this
Gary,
point.
what is the potential for the rest of this building coming down?
Well, we've had the architect early on showed up at the building, and we put him with his blueprints and has looked through the building. We had some concerns about the stability on the west side at some point early on. That was confirmed to be more of a decorative effect on the outside and not structural members. We have some level of confidence that the structure is sound at this point with what's left standing.
Chief, could you paint a picture for us, if you would, of the devastation?
We've been listening to a press conference called by Governor Frank Keating of Oklahoma, the mayor of Oklahoma City, and that is the situation live in Oklahoma for now. And that's the very latest in the federal building bombing there. To recap what we know to the moment, at least 19 people are dead, including 17 children. Hundreds more are injured. Many more people are trapped inside the building and feared dead. One unconfirmed report has only 2 of 80 people found so far in the building that have survived. Now, police are looking for 3 Mideastern men who they believe may have had something to do with this bombing. We'll have more on this developing story as events warrant, of course, here on Action News. And Action News reporter Dan Cuellar is covering the catastrophe in Oklahoma City. He will have the latest tonight on Action News at 11.
And of course,
the black smoke spread and then hovered over the Oklahoma City skyline, and the debris covered 10 city blocks. An act of terrorism has struck at the heartland of America, and at this point, nobody knows who did it. It is Wednesday night, and the big story on Action News tonight is the massive bombing in Oklahoma City. It happened at 10 o'clock our time, 9 o'clock local time. 500 people had just settled down to work at the federal building in the heart of downtown when a huge blast tore the building apart. People inside had no idea what had hit them, but it didn't take long to figure it out. An explosion literally tore through the structure. Within seconds, injured people were streaming out of the building. Tragically, many did not. The latest death toll has been put at 20, including 17 children. The building houses a daycare center, but rescuers concede the death toll will climb much higher. For instance, out of 80 Secret Service agents in one part of the building, only 2 have been accounted for. Many children are not accounted for either, said one rescuer. It is just body after body in there. But officials now say that there are still people alive inside. Firefighters are coming out of the wreckage with tears in their eyes, so emotional and devastating is the scene. We hear from 3 survivors who were inside.
I was on the 7th floor, and then, of course, the 8th floor came down and went through, and then they just kept on going down.
Yeah, under the table when the ceiling started to fall in. That's what saved me, I guess.
Out from under the desk, and there just wasn't any building left around us.
Really?
So our whole office area is gone.
So if you weren't under that desk, you wouldn't have made it?
Well, my floor was okay, and the ceiling had come down, but there was still concrete above, so it was just a corner of the office that was left that we were in. Everybody else that we worked with is gone.
Are you okay? Just the corner of your office was okay? And the rest of the floor was completely flattened?
And we could go over the edge and look, and you could see the sky and as far down as you can look, and just a hole.
And at one point early on, the chaos was punctuated by panic. Officials thought there was a second unexploded device, and this was the reaction when word of that spread.
Reporting another bomb. Let's keep going.
Yeah, okay. I think he said another bomb.
But as it turned out, authorities say there was no second device. Rescuers have found a rocket launcher, but they believe that may have been stored in the building by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Now the bomb itself. Authorities say the explosion was caused by a car bomb, about 1,000 to 1,200 pounds, about the same size as the bomb that hit the World Trade Center in New York. The explosion carved out a crater 8 feet deep and 30 feet wide. The blast was felt 30 miles away. It spread debris over a wide section of the city. Said Governor Frank Keating, whoever did this was an animal. No one has claimed responsibility for the explosion. There has been speculation because today is the 2nd anniversary of the FBI storming the headquarters of the Branch Davidian cult in Waco, Texas. But there is no evidence to point to that or anything else. Officials say they are looking for 3 men in blue jumpsuits seen leaving the area shortly before the explosion. One official says they appeared to be Middle Eastern. Meanwhile, right now, medical personnel are desperately trying to save lives and heal broken bodies. It is impossible to know just what the conditions are of many people still inside. Many of the injured were mere passers-by who were showered with bricks, concrete, and flying glass, but the medical effort is now underway. 30 minutes ago, we heard this from President Clinton at the White House.
It was an act of cowardice, and it was evil. The United States will not tolerate it, and I will not allow the people of this country to be intimidated by evil cowards.
Clinton said he is sending a team of investigators to Oklahoma, headed by the FBI, and he has declared a state of emergency in Oklahoma City. Clinton tried to make it very clear how he will treat this crisis and the people who caused it.
Justice will be swift, certain, and severe. These people are killers, and they must be treated like killers.
And the president asked all Americans to pray for the people of Oklahoma City. Back at the blast site, a call has gone out for heavy equipment to help in the search, rescue, and recovery effort. The response was immediate. Dozens of bulldozers, front-end loaders, dump trucks, and cranes have begun arriving at the scene. Huge lights are also being brought in so crews can work throughout the night. Specially trained dogs are also there to sniff for human remains. The effort is expected to take several days, with twisted steel and concrete slabs pancaked on top of each other. And within the past hour, severe weather has moved into the area. Heavy rains are compounding an already impossible task. Authorities fear high winds could force them to stop work. An arduous task indeed facing rescuers in Oklahoma City. Action News reporter Dan Quaya is right now flying to Oklahoma City, and we hope to have live reports from Dan on Action News at 11 o'clock tonight. Now, Wilmington, Delaware is one of several cities in this country where bomb threats were called into federal office buildings. It was shortly after 12 noon when hundreds of federal workers were evacuated from the Boggs Federal Building. Agents using bomb-sniffing dogs went right to work, scouring every nook and cranny of the building. 3 hours and 15 minutes later, they gave the all clear. The same thing happened in Boston and Fort Worth, Texas. Agents found nothing in those cities either. When one hears about something like this elsewhere in the country, the temptation is compelling to ask, what would it be like if it happened in our area? Well, the fact is that both the Red Cross and the city of Philadelphia are far more prepared than you might think. We have two reports tonight, starting with Action News reporter Denise James.
Paul Carden, the Philadelphia area Red Cross Disaster Service Manager, has been monitoring Oklahoma City rescue efforts very closely. Carden designed the Oklahoma City disaster plan and used